We're recording, and this is Malcolm Berman on malcolmpresents.com. And this is my co-host, Deborah Manning, on Conversations with Deborah, a bi-coastal dialogue, because Deborah is in South Carolina, and I am in beautiful Los Angeles, California. Hey, Deborah, how are you?
It's great to see you. Yes, and I am in beautiful South Carolina, and it is gorgeous. I'm coming up on my 6th year being here. I'm a native Californian. I was born in Los Angeles, beautiful Los Angeles, and decided about 6 years ago to move to South Carolina. And it's been an eye-opening experience. It's been a great experience. I'm a former news reporter, worked for National Public Radio, worked for PBS, worked for Cap Cities in Los Angeles. Malcolm, you and I have been friends for ages, a long, long time. We used to have a radio program I had with my late husband called Real Money, call-in program about finances. And that's where Malcolm and I both met and had a grand time. But Malcolm contacted me and said, you know, we need to get back together again. We need to chat about things. And so that's what this is all about.
As a matter of fact, part of this show, I think I want to develop a stock thing, because I want you to become my advisor. So we'll talk about it, how we could do it directly. We don't now with the different services. You don't have to go through a stockbroker.
No, you don't.
You can buy it yourself.
Yeah, it really is quite remarkable. So here in South Carolina, the leaves are just now starting to turn. The weather today in the last week and a half to 2 weeks has reminded me so much of Southern California, meaning that we've been in the mid 70s, very little humidity. The leaves, as I say, are just now starting to go that very delicate yellow, very delicate orange. And I can look out the window here. We are surrounded by 100-foot oaks, elm trees, and they're all just little bits and pieces of the color. And of course, up in New England, where I have a lot of friends, they are just a blaze of color up there, but we'll be a little bit later this year, a little bit later. So,
well, as an ex-New Yorker, I've been out in Los Angeles for the last 40 years. Mm-hmm. And in the morning, I do my running or walking. Mm-hmm. And it's been like in the 40s and 50s in the morning. I ain't used to that.
No.
I'm just like I'm at the North Pole in the midst of winter.
Well, it is funny here that we officially have, now that I'm in South Carolina, there are officially four actual seasons. So it's interesting being able to stow away all of my summer clothes, bring out my winter clothes, and my hats and, all of my jackets and all of that. But it really is very funny. I remember my mom, who is from England, from New England, would say the same thing, as you would stow all of your stuff away. And it's like a brand new wardrobe. So right. You can see I'm in my autumn look at this point right now. So at any rate.
When I moved out here, I've been running for many years. I used to run the reservoir in Central Park. And
wonderful.
I forget when it was. It was in the late 70s, and I was speaking to a friend of mine out in California. And I just came back from running, and mm-hmm. with the wind chill factor, it was minus 10 degrees.
Holy smoly!
Because I come around the corner of the park and run against the wind, and I was freezing.
Holy man!
And then I spoke to her one day after I got back from running, and I said, "Where are you?" She was at the beach. I said, "You were at the beach, it's 10 degrees. It says, no, it's 85 degrees. And, it was one of those, and I think it was some thing in November or December. And, as a Southern California, that there are days like in, the midwinter,
of course,
that you have the perfect day. It's like in the mid 80s and the sun is shining, no wind.
You bet.
And I said, okay, forget about it. I'm moving out to California. And I think I always told you, I joke with my kids that I'm moving back, we're going to go back to New York. And they look at me and they say, Dad, if you move back to New York, you'd freeze. I said, what do you mean? He said, it's 70 degrees and you have gloves and a scarf on and a stocking cap. He said, you're not going to survive the winters in New York. And I like to deny it, but I tend to agree with him.
That's true. I'll tell you. Well, it's been an interesting couple of weeks for the Fisher family, And we've had guests, relatives to come in. My husband's eldest daughter, Madison, and her friend came on in. And they're from Portland. It's been very interesting talking with them about Portland, Oregon. Of course, last week they had more Antifa situations where there was $500,000 worth of damage because of Antifa groups that were tearing apart the downtown area. They've been very interesting, a very interesting source of information about really what's going on the ground. The problem, of course, now is that the news media, as always, and prior to my leaving, because I left the news media long time ago after I was told I was supposed to report a certain way. No, you don't report a certain way. You go both sides and what have you. But at any rate, the news media is not really particularly reporting what's going on. The thing apparently that's going on in Portland is that many of the residents now are becoming very concerned, very worried about their personal safety. And while they're not ready to leave the city because they love the city, they love the lifestyle there, what have you. The problem is that at a certain time of the day, that downtown areas, and now it's spreading to suburban areas, become the property of anarchists. And they're getting a little bit concerned. So they're starting to look around for different cities. And it was interesting having them come to Greenville, only because, once again, the concept everybody seems to have of Greenville is Hickstown. Have you gotten used to the twang yet? I said, what twang? What are y'all talking about? Type of a thing.
Well, what about y'all talking about?
Yeah, that's right. But it was interesting listening to what they had to say because apparently the police have pretty well abandoned the streets, and they've had to because the mayor and who's also the police chief has decided that he does not want to back police enforcement. And apparently what's also coming in is a group called the Proud Boys, a right-wing group, and they're having little turf wars back and forth. The problem is, of course, at this point, you've got businesses, small businesses, especially small businesses, trying to open up, and they can't. And the downtown area of Portland is really, really suffering. Now, Madison and her beau are in the restaurant business, and those restaurants have opened, closed, opened, closed, opened, closed. And she says it's just becoming more and more difficult to be able to live in this city, as beautiful as it is.
Yeah, does that have to do only with the violence, or does it have to do with the COVID-19?
Well, it's a combination of things. She was very worried about COVID and got a vaccination as quickly as possible, as did he. I think that it's a combination of that because she felt as though it was kind of breeding on itself, because obviously a lot of the people that were rioting had masks on. They had full masks on, which I suppose was good for COVID and what have you. But she's seeing now just an increase in the number of violent incidents that are taking place against ordinary folks, robberies, a lot of street crime and what have you. And she's seen a definite increase. Now, she's very protective of Portland, don't get me wrong. But she is now becoming more and more concerned about her own personal safety, which is a shame. It really is a shame.
Yeah, but how much of this is due to political differences? Like you have the Antifas and the Proud Boys, but how much is this due to plain ordinary crime?
Well, I think that when you hogtie the police, and they're not able to do enforcement of petty crimes. I mean, for example, we've seen down in San Francisco, a number of large corporations, Walgreens, for example, decided to close down because the wholesale shoplifting is taking place, where you can take $900 worth of stuff and not be considered to be a criminal. So her comment apparently was just that she's becoming more and more concerned at the lawlessness, the overall anarchy that's taking place in the city. And it hasn't anything to do particularly with a change in political policies, because there's no longer the demon Trump to be able to blame. It's just pure anarchy that's taking place. And once again, unfortunately, when you're not allowing police to be able to control the city, normal people who get in the way of the anarchists are going to get hurt.
Well, you talk about anarchists, because the people who are robbing stores are not the anarchists. They're ordinary criminals who are taking advantage of the situation. Mm-hmm. The anarchists are the ones that have political views, and they're not necessarily burning buildings. They're demonstrating.
Well, I think we've gone beyond demonstrations here.
Well, yeah,
I think we're a little bit over that hump of demonstrations here.
But I agree with you. I mean, something has to be done about the crime rate.
Yeah,
and something has to be done about people being able to just go into the stores and loot them. I mean, I'm liberal, as you know. I see the videos of people coming in and loading their shopping carts and just running out, and I'm against that. So I don't think you can put a tag on that, a political tag, liberal, conservative. I think everybody is concerned about that. The question is, what do you do?
Well, what did we do in the past? What we did in the past is that we had law enforcement taking care of things, whether it be private security, that were able to take care of shoplifters, and also we had police forces that were taking care of the criminals on the street. It's almost like open season on normal everyday people, and there's something wrong with that. And,
well, I think it's going over backwards. In other words, I do believe that there had to be I think the police were forced unto themselves. I think they did take advantage of the situation. I think they did, to more or less target minority groups, because they're easy targets to pick on. It's funny, I watch old TV. Mm-hmm. And I've been watching, Adam 12.
Okay.
Or Dragnet, which Adam 12 is actually by Jack Webb. Jack Webb's company is doing.
You're not seeing an over policing on those, are you? I mean,
no. But what you're seeing is police relating to people, and police talking to people in a like a person to person type of thing. Sure. They were real. I noticed over the last few years, when I talk to the policeman on they don't have a beat anymore, but in the car, he almost talks like a military man. I mean, he sort of has a sharp, yes, sir, no, sir. It has no relationship to me. He doesn't, speak to me like I'm a person that he's doing. It's sort of like, can't explain it. It's very much if I spoke to someone, I mean, yes, sir, a Marine. That was the attitude that they have.
Well, it's interesting because here in South Carolina, in Greenville, a number of people and a number of folks like myself have made it a point to go up to, for example, we just had something called Fall into Greenville, which was a enormous street fair that took place. We probably had 250,000 people on the streets and along Main Street, and 45 to 50 different restaurants where you could taste test and blah, blah, blah. At any rate, there was a big police presence that was there. What I saw was very interesting insofar as a number of people would go up to the police officers and say, thank you for being here. Thank you for being what you're doing. It's very interesting because it's a different approach and they're very friendly. I know that we had BLM protests that took place after the George Floyd murder. And during that period of time, the police were there and they made sure they were actually marching at the head of the BLM protest to make sure that things stayed in tow. And in fact, they made sure that they are part of the community. When things started to get out of hand, meaning they had outside agitators coming in that were talking about smashing windows and doing destruction on Main Street, the police talked directly to some of the local BLM leaders and said, listen, I don't want to arrest you. If you start this, we're going to start to arrest you. So I agree. The approach needs to be different, but I think also our approach to police officers need to be different. Going up and saying, thank you for being there. Hell, I mean, I even say thank you to the Walmart people that are there, for heaven's sake, saying thank you for stocking the shelves.
Do you know your local police person that's over there that covers your area?
Oh, yeah.
You say hello to him and you know
Absolutely.
his first name?
Yeah.
I don't know. In Los Angeles. Yeah.
But for example, you can do the exact same thing. In fact, anybody who's viewing this should take the time to make yourself acquainted with the local police. For example, I know the sheriff that's here, county sheriff. He knows me, I know him. I know this sounds ridiculous. I don't care. We deliver cookies down to them. And we've got to have this break, and we have got to have some kindness and things. Now, I know LA is big.
Right.
But you do have precincts, and you do have specific areas that specific officers do cover. And I think it's important that we take that extra step. So I hope to hear a report as to who your police officer is.
Yeah, well you do have community involvement, or they try, because I know in each area, I haven't seen it much lately. Well, it might be because I don't own my own house anymore. But when I owned my own house, they had each month one of the policemen would come and go to the homeowners association and speak there and say what was happening. I guess now that I'm in an apartment house, I don't, I don't see that anymore. I don't know if they have it, but we're not included.
But that's very important to be able to do that. That's one of the things I've been asked to speak to a group of individuals about community involvement, because it's very interesting. People are starting to watch this program. Hi, everybody. They're starting to watch the program. And I'm speaking to a group of folks, and they're all saying, what can we possibly do? Well, the first thing you do, once again, what can you as an individual do? You can make sure you know the police officer that covers your particular beat. And if it's a changing officer, you make sure that you know who that person is, or at least introduce yourself. I'm going to be saying to this group, you need to get involved and perhaps look at the school board. You can run for the school board. You can run for the library commission. You can run for the rec department position, because they need to have ordinary folks, rather than complaining about everything, which seems to be the norm these days, is to actually have your voice heard, and making sure that, for example, the hours at the swimming pool are conducive to the rest of the community, that it doesn't close from 1 until 4 o'clock in the afternoon, for crying out loud. And kids are getting out from school and would like to go ahead and swim. I mean, that's a no-brainer to me. But once again, I don't believe that administrators can necessarily think that way. We're closer to the situation. You and I are far closer to the situation than they are, as a matter of fact.
Well, I don't know if they do. I think they still do it, because even when my kids were going to school, they had a after-school program. But I remember, when I was in middle school and high school, the gyms were opened. After hours, 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock, up until about 10, 11 o'clock, where I would go over to my local junior, especially in New York, where it'd be cold. So during the weekdays, I could go over to the gym and play basketball.
Yep. Well, it's interesting, because here they have a program that they make sure that there is a uniformed police officer in each one of the elementary schools, because obviously they're concerned about the safety, and also the fact that they want to have that feeling of community involvement, and it starts at the elementary schools. I just found that refreshing. I found it absolutely refreshing, because suddenly the police officers are not the enemy. The police officers are there, they're friendly, and it starts at a very young age.
Yeah, what they need, I think the word is community police. The problem is, I think for whatever reason, it became us against them. It's a police became insulated, and it was they were protecting themselves from the public, and they couldn't reveal too much. And again, I don't know why it happened, but it happened.
Well, I think unfortunately what happened with the situation with George Floyd is it became a lightning rod, and it became a lightning rod. I was appalled, stunned. I still can't believe what I had seen with the videotape. But that was one police officer, and unfortunately 3 other police officers that watched that. I don't want my police officers to do things like that, but that is one police officer. I want to talk to you about the people that, for example, helped us. We had a situation where 3 doors down, there was a fire that took place, and they had police, they had fire people, and we thanked each and every one of them. There are a lot of dedicated people that are out there, and you know what? There are bad people every place.
Right,
but individually.
Right, but the thing is, the George Floyd incident was what's an example of the straw that broke the camel's back. There had been a lot of things like that happening, and the police had been insulated. They had not been prosecuted.
Why didn't management take care of it? Why wasn't it taken care of?
Because it became an institution upon itself, the police. That's why it's not, I don't believe in disband the police, which obviously I think they can't do, but reform them. And there's a way of reforming them.
Well, it's also called mismanagement.
Yeah.
And we seem to have a plethora of mismanagement that's going on, not the least of which, have you been to the grocery store lately? Have you looked at the shelves lately?
No, I have not actually.
There's something strange going on here.
But I don't see why. For the life of me, I don't see. I'm not sure what the problem is. I know the cargo ships are stacked up in the ports and they're not moving. My question is why?
Do you know why? And I found this out. I was slack-jawed when I found out.
Why?
California passed a law that says that a truck that is any more than 3 years old and is not retrofitted with air pollution control, blah, 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 but specifically more than 3 years old, cannot go to the port of Los Angeles or Long Beach. And as a result, they have cut out 3/4 to 80% of all of the trucks that normally would be running that the goods and taking care of the ports. There are now more than 100 ships sitting off the beaches of Long Beach. Right. And you realize that the reason that there was an oil spill was because one of those doggone ships dragged their anchor across the pipeline. So it's just like, I don't understand why we are not taking care of this. In the meantime, we have the director of transportation, Pete Buttigieg, 2 months worth of maternity leave. I mean, I do wish that someone, for heaven's sakes, would start doing their jobs.
Well, I have a question for you. Yeah. Not a question, but
sure.
Number two things. Number one, why can't they do a temporary ban on that order for trucks, because we need them?
Thank you.
And have them come in. Number two, why can't the National Guard, or you always see traveling with big trucks, why can't they have an emergency crew to unload the ships?
I think that you don't need to have the National Guard come in if you simply, like you said, common sense,
suspend the law.
That law on a temporary basis.
Right.
60, 90, 180 days. Why are they not doing that?
Right. I don't know. And
you're now president of the United States. How about
that? Well, that's California. That's not necessarily a presidential type of thing, but I think that's a state thing, because I do agree with the state regulations about I think it was good intentions, but right now, they have to suspend that, because as they say about good intentions, good intentions pave the road to hell.
Absolutely, and we are unfortunately in hell.
But also with the pipes, the pipeline, which is another problem, is when they built the pipelines, they built them in the path of ships, and they knew that. There was a whole controversy about that when they built the lines. So it's not that the ship shouldn't have been there. The pipeline should not have been put in where the pipelines were put in, because of the possibility of what happened.
Well, I do have to say that it's a whole comedy of errors, and unfortunately, it's not very funny. When we're having, for example, now, when we first got here, gasoline was $1.60 a gallon. It was a year ago, before all of this started to get crazy again, we were at $1.90 per gallon. We're now starting to crest over, we're about $3.10, $3.20. You guys in California, what, mid-4s, upper-4s?
Mid-4, close to 5.
Okay. How do normal everyday people afford something like that?
What you can do, you and Fish, were your bicycle built for 2.
Well, you know what? We use 1 tank of gas a month. That's what we've always done. We have 1 car, we don't have 2 cars, and we walk most all places, what have you. But the bottom line is, working individuals, This is a terrible burden upon working individuals who are, once again, a lot of people are still trying to get back to work. I don't understand this short-sightedness of what's going on right now with our government. Once again, I consider myself to be an independent, but I do have to tell you that since independents seem to have put Biden into office, that he's losing the independents. He's down to 33% approval rate from the independents, and that's a critical mass situation. I don't understand why he is not reacting. And in fact, I watched part of the CNN town hall with Anderson Cooper last night, and I was offended. I was offended by the fact that he made fun of the fact freedom, he made fun of the fact freedom. Well, once again, this whole mandate situation about the vaccinations. And he said that, yes, it would be fine to go ahead and fire firefighters and first responders. Those were the people that helped us through this COVID situation, and fire hospital people. Those are the folks that helped us through this COVID tragedy, that it would be okay if they didn't take the vaccine to go ahead and fire them. What are we doing shooting ourselves in the foot?
Yeah, but the question is, what should we do with them if there's a mandate to take the vaccine?
Well, you cannot, as a president, issue a mandate. It does not have the power of law. The problem we have at this point right now is that we have an individual, Joe Biden, that is absolutely, completely sure of himself as to what his decisions are. The problem is that you need to have congressional okay on a mandate. You can't just summarily put it across, but he's doing that.
Well, no, I don't know whether, I don't know if it's a national emergency, whether you need to put permission of Congress. But we are going through a national emergency. We have over 700,000 people that were killed with COVID. Yep. We've had the whole economy turned upside down because of COVID. And what do you do about it? Do you namby-pamby and say, okay, it's okay for you to take the vaccine, it's okay for you to not? The problem is, if you leave the virus to continue, it will manifest itself into other forms.
But the problem
like
is,
Delta.
The problem is, once again, you chose to be vaccinated, I chose to be vaccinated, okay? I have my booster. I bet you have your booster. Okay.
I haven't had my booster yet. I think we're just approved today for the
perfect
Moderna.
Perfect. Doesn't hurt a bit. But that being said, I will defend people's rights to be able to not take the vaccination.
Did you think?
The bottom line is, hold on, let me get my case on it.
Go.
First and foremost, they need to stop freaking apologizing for not taking the vaccination. That's number one. Do I understand why they're not doing it? No, but that's not my purview to be able to understand why they don't want to take the vaccination. Fine. But number two, since I am fully vaccinated, I have nothing to fear from people who are not vaccinated. Nothing. I'm not going to get this thing. And guess what? Even though I'm fully vaccinated, I keep a mask with me, because there are times when I go into a store or go into close quarters, I just put my mask on. No big deal. But the bottom line is, this is America. This is not the USSR. This is not China. We have freedoms. We have basic rights. And we, as vaccinated individuals, have nothing to fear from the people who are unvaccinated. Because guess what? There's now been new documentation that just came out today that says, apparently, Dr. Tony Fauci's group, the National Institute of Health, actually did fund some of the gain of where they changed the nature of the virus in Wuhan. They now have documentation, even though he said nope, didn't happen.
I've heard the headlines. I haven't read the story. But the question is, yeah, I agree with you. You cannot force people to be vaccinated, but you can say if they're not vaccinated, you can't go into this area. You can't go into the supermarket without showing, a voucher. You can't go to a movie theater. You can't go to have lunch. And by the way, the way it affects you, and I've heard other people, you might have elective surgery that you have to go through, but you can't get into the hospital because they're not doing it, because the hospital is full of people with COVID. And,
Well, guess
most
what?
of the COVID people who are hospitalized are non-vaccinated. So
Guess what?
do you think the hospital should say, okay, you don't have a vaccination, you have COVID, we're not going to treat you?
Guess what? Let me give you some real life situations.
Yeah.
My husband had to have kidney surgery. It was noted as being elective. Okay. So they said that he needed to do this, that, what have you. My husband said, I'm not doing this, that, or anything. I'm not doing this or that. And you know what they ended up doing? They ended up saying that it was emergency surgery. Okay. So if you have to have elective surgery, and it is, in fact, in his case, he needed to get it done, period, end of story. They changed the denotation on it as being, it had to be a mandatory surgery. Done. It was done. So this baloney about people can't get in because of the COVID cases and all of that, excuse the language, it's bullshit.
Yeah,
It's just
I think the thing is, but both you and Fish are highly educated and have perseverance, and can, you know, with your perseverance, you go, when people say no once, they say no twice, you keep on going after that until they say yes. I mean, I do that with lots of things.
There you go.
Yeah, they're what's called gatekeepers, and the gatekeepers are the people who can say no.
But the bottom line is, these
all they can do is say no.
They are not flooded at this point right now with COVID situations. They are not.
In certain areas, they are.
Well, the unfortunate thing is, then why, if they were flooded with COVID cases, would you then mandate those nurses and doctors to get COVID vaccinations? Otherwise, they lose their jobs. I'm not understanding the logic of that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole thing. But the thing is, we don't. The saying that we have freedom, I mean, that's bull. You do not have freedom. You do not have freedom of speech because you can't do, you can't say certain things. You don't have freedom. You don't have freedom to leave the country without getting all sorts of passports and documentations. You don't have the freedom of driving a car. You have to get a license and you have to be tested. The only thing you do have freedom of, which is wrong, is you have freedom to buy a gun in certain states. And Texas, I think you can either none permitted. You can have a gun on your person. So I'm just picturing the old. Soon they're going to start wearing cowboy hats and have these 6-shooters on holsters.
Here in South Carolina, they do have what's called open carry at this point right now, and I must say. That's fine. That's fine. However, I must tell you that if I am in a store where I'm having an open carry situation, I'm leaving the store. It's very simple. It's very simple for me. And yet, do I own a gun? Absolutely, I do. Absolutely. There's no question. But I do find it very illogical that we seem to be told at this point right now, we're going to have to do with less. When I saw the Washington Post come out and talk about the fact that we're going to have to get used to doing with less, doing blah blah blah, and all of this, I don't understand. Is this what we voted for?
Well, again, no.
Good to hear.
And I think basically he was on the right path. And I think that the two things we have to be. One thing I think is the main thing which has to be done. Is getting rid of what you disagree is getting rid of the filibuster.
Oh.
And if it doesn't work out in another 2 years, they'll get the filibuster back again. Or if the Republicans take over, they will do away with the filibuster. But thirdly, or fourthly, we've run out of time.
Oh no!
Because you've been away for the 2 weeks. You got to come back each week. As a matter of fact, we got to do it. Eventually, in fact, if we find a sponsor so we have more time, use out there, if you want to sponsor our show, please contact me at malcolmpresents@gmail.com, and we could do another show a week or 2 shows a week. We could come a daily show for an hour.
We've had some nice comments from people, and we really do appreciate folks taking the time to leave comments. Both thumbs up and thumbs down, which is fine.
But now the important news of the day, which has Los Angeles in an uproar.
What's that?
The pennant fever.
Yes.
And it's been up and down.
Yeah.
It's just a brief thing, which I know we'll, to go out with. The Dodgers were playing the wild card game against St. Louis. Mm-hmm. And they finally won it by a 2-run home run in the 8th inning. That they won 2-1. The first 2 games of the second series, the pennant race against the New York Giants, was about 1 run each. Now we're against who are we playing? We're playing Atlanta.
Yep. Just down the street from us.
And in the first 2 games, we lost by a run. And they scored in the inning. In the third game, we finally won it by a 3-run homer, which tied it in the 8th inning. And then we run it with a score 6-5. So everybody thought, oh, this is it. We have the momentum. In the 4th game, they totally sucked. They lost 9-2. Everybody was rejected again. Yesterday, they won 11-2. All of a sudden, the bats became alive. You don't know what to expect. Now, tomorrow and Sunday, they're still down 3-2.
Yep.
So they have to win 2 in a row now.
Yep.
So as I say, go Dodger Blue. Even though I'm a Brooklyn Dodger fan, and the Los Angeles Dodgers are not in my heart like the Brooklyn Dodgers were. Mm-hmm. And that was a big disappointment.
But they're inching in, aren't they, Malcolm? They're inching in.
Well, as I told you, there's a solo joke. If they had Walter O'Malley, who was the owner of the Dodgers when they moved, if you had Stalin, the premier of Russia, and you had Hitler in one room, and you had a gun with 2 bullets,
okay,
who would you shoot?
Go ahead.
And a Dodger fan would say, shoot O'Malley first. And you know who you would shoot second?
Go ahead.
You would shoot him again to make sure he was dead. Anyway, under that note, Deborah, don't disappoint me. I expect you next week at this time.
Next week. We'll see you then, and we'll see exactly how the Dodgers go. Dodgers!
Yeah. Go Dodger Blue. Bye.
Bye-bye.